Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite genera of orchids, Stanhopea, and different culture that we have used to grow these over the years. So Stanhopea are interesting plants that come from Central and South America. They have very short-lived flowers, typically 3 to 5 days is about as long as they'll ever last. They're very showy and fragrant, and they bloom pendulous, facing downwards. These plants like to be extremely wet, so we water them frequently. This is one of those orchids where I would say it is pretty much impossible to overwater this plant. As long as it's got drainage in the pots, you can't overwater this. They love moisture all the time. The only thing that will happen if you underwater them is they'll just slow down with their growth. So most people grow Stanhopea in baskets because the flower spike comes from any of these holes in the basket. It allows the plant to bloom freely and easily. However, another technique we use is solid pots. Not necessarily to flower them, but to grow them. Solid pots hold a lot of moisture, and I can grow the plants here at our nursery about twice as fast if they're in a solid container. But one other advantage to the solid container is higher flower count. So take a look at this Stanhopea ruckeri. This particular plant has a 7 flower count. Often you will see 3 to 4, maybe 5 flowers on this species, and a lot of Stanhopea in general. That's because they're in open baskets which air out a lot more. So this particular plant is in a solid pot with sphagnum moss, hence a lot of flowers because of the more hydration. And as you can see, the flower spike simply found its way over the edge of the pot. They'll either do that or they'll find the drain hole on the bottom to go through. Now, I can say that growing in a solid pot will rob you of more flowers because many of the flower spikes will not find their way out and they'll just get stuck and die off inside the pot. But when they do get out, you'll get a bigger flower show. And so that's just another option, an alternative to growing them. A lot of people find that they don't have the time to water them as much as they'll need in a basket, so they end up switching to a solid container. So it is a way that can be used to grow these plants. Another thing I would mention is fertilizer. These plants, since they're constantly growing, we are constantly feeding them. There really is no off season, so you can feed every other watering, 2 or 3 waterings in a row. I would just say every 4th watering or so, do a good flushing of pure water to help flush out any fertilizer salts that could start to build up. Another thing to talk about is the type of moss. So most people use New Zealand sphagnum moss. It really is the best sphagnum moss because it's large and fluffy and long-lived. However, Chilean sphagnum moss, which is less expensive, breaks down quicker and holds more water, is actually a great moss for Stanhopea. They don't really care about the extra airflow that New Zealand moss gives them, so I often use Chilean moss, especially on the smaller pots, because it holds moisture longer. And there's no problem using it in the baskets either. It's just that it's shorter fiber, so when I pot with New Zealand, I have less stuff falling out the bottom. But either moss works great, especially for smaller pots. I highly recommend Chilean moss. I've even grown these in fine bark or Pro Mix. So any potting material that holds a lot of water. But overall, I would say moss is the best one to go for. They also seem to grow in low to medium light when they're young, and when they're mature, we'll grow them in medium to bright light. But they're pretty forgiving on any light level overall from our experience in growing them. And then the last thing to mention is water quality. They do like good quality water, so we recommend a low mineral water, which would mean collected rainwater, reverse osmosis, distilled water. The purer the better for Stanhopea in our experience. But this is a great plant to grow for any skill level of orchid grower. It's a fun plant to try out if you want to try something different. The nice thing about these plants, once they've hit a mature size, is they can bloom more than once in the season. So even though the flowers are short-lived, you may have that experience 2 or 3. I've seen up to 5 spikes bloom within a 2-month period in the summer for a lot of these varieties. So you can enjoy them more than just a few days out of the year. And to add bonus, they smell fantastic. So they will fill up your room with a nice sweet aroma. And it's one of the few orchids that has fragrance all day and all night. So there you have it. That's a little culture tip on the Stanhopea. Hope you enjoyed it.